Make sure my hair is looking nice. Smile for the camera. Say a quick prayer for what we're about to receive. May the Lord make us truly thankful. For Christ's sake, amen. Greetings, salutations, and good now. My name is Kevis Major, doing it major. Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we're going to be doing our weekly forecast. We're going to be talking about the period from the 1st of June up until the 7th of June 2026. And we're going to get straight into it because this is not going to be a long video. We're here for a good time and not a long time. And so we're going to get straight into it. First, I want to say happy Gemini season. Shout out to all of the Geminis who are celebrating or who celebrated this season. Go Gemini, go Gemini, go Gemini, go! Gemini is the sign that we are looking at as the examples of what to do and what not to do. And so I hope the Geminis have been leading this month. All right. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit about the Gemini season or the Gemini energy, but the heavy emphasis is on the full moon. We're still experiencing the full moon, which initiated with the new moon in Taurus. So this full moon has been kind of, I want to say a mystic one because it kind of started in Scorpio. I really want to say it's supposed to be like a Scorpio moon because the new moon was in Taurus. So it kind of started in Scorpio, went into its peak in Sagittarius, and then it's going to be sliding into Capricorn. And so again, you know, this is one of those full moons that are going to be transiting 3 signs. And it was a major full moon. I mean, we had some major events. We went to watch the Champions League finals, Arsenal versus PSG. And you thought it was a coincidence that a major sporting event took place under a full moon in Sagittarius. I mean, Sagittarius, fire, travel, expansion, higher heights, broader horizons, grand stages, entertainment, different cultures, languages, all of that exploration and culmination happening. And so it's not a coincidence. So we had, you know, the full moon in Sagittarius, and it's going to be sliding in to Capricorn tomorrow on the 1st of June, still the full moon. And so the full moon, you know, all of this energy, all of this emotional energy being radiated, our enthusiasm is high, but we need to ground this out as the moon shifts into Capricorn. We know that, again, Sagittarius full moon is about big dreams and bigger perspectives, traveling, studying, and just having freedom. And so we want to try to anchor all of this enthusiasm into tangible actions as the moon enters into Capricorn. And by the way, shout out to PSG, you know, back-to-back champions. They were able to do their thing. I was really rooting for the Gunners. I was surrounded by a lot of Arsenal fans. I really wanted Gunners to win, low-key, but it didn't happen, you know. All right, so on the 1st, we're going to be having, you know, that little full moon effect as the moon is in Capricorn. And so anytime the moon is in Capricorn, and it's going to be on a Monday too, people could be a bit stoic, a bit cold, you know, all about their business and trying to be organized and stable. Capricorn is that energy of big business as well, so people might get a bit cutthroat, anything for that, I don't want to say dollar, but for that stability, for that thing that you could stand on, you know, even when it comes to your career, your reputation, how you're seen in the public arena, like your public image and all of that. So Monday is not only going to be Monday morning blues, but a full moon, you know, Capricorn type of energy. And so we got to look out for that as well. On June 1st, we also have Mercury entering Cancer. So shout out to all of the Cancer signs. We know that we soon are going to be entering into the Cancer season. Gemini, sorry. Did I say Gemini enters Cancer? I meant to say Mercury. And I'm not going to, you know, do any edits or anything. So whatever happens in this video happens in this video. Mercury doesn't like to be in Cancer, so maybe that's why he's kind of tripping me up there. But Mercury, you know, already on the cusp of leaving Gemini, entering into Cancer. And so this is where, you know, that quick mental agility could kind of slow down as communication becomes more emotional, more defensive, more protective. This is a good time to speak from the heart, to connect with family, you know, kind of trust your intuition. On a business sense, you know, we kind of prioritize storytelling that could evoke certain emotions, nostalgia, and stuff like that. Um, so as Mercury enters Cancer, we know that communication, how we learn, just how we process information is going to be going through a major shift. We probably could do an entire video about Mercury going into Cancer, but the main gist is, you know, just a bit of a shift when it comes to communicating. On the second, we're gonna be running through this quite quickly because there's not much happening this week. I ain't gonna tell no lie. Gemini is giving us a breather. It's all about, you know, the full moon and the moon waning. And so I want to do a different video about the waning moon because I have a different perspective. Maybe we could kind of dabble into it at the end of this video just a little bit. But, you know, as the moon wanes, we gain. And so the seeds that you've been planting during the new moon leading up to the full moon, you should be able to be reaping, you know, some of the hard work or some of the harvest that you've been putting in. And so there's a heavy emphasis of, you know, protecting the things that you've been working on, and also being able to, you know, accumulate or be able to enjoy some of the fruits of your labor during this week, right, as the moon is waning. So yeah, it could be a good week for making money, kicking off with Capricorn. So we know that the markets are going to be opening in a few hours, and so Sagittarius moving into Capricorn, you know, you might be doing your money rubbing hands right now, like, yo, excited to see where the markets are going to be going, you know, into the next week. All right, on June 2nd, we have Sun sextile in Saturn, and this one, you know, is seen as a harmonious alignment. Sun is in Gemini, right? And a sextile, you know, two energies joining in a harmonious way. So, you know, they're supporting energies from Saturn being in Aries. Now, we know Saturn is that planet of discipline, wants you to be hard, wants you to be committed. It's talking about those long-term endeavors, you know, your work ethic, and just how you could be patient and disciplined, determined in order to get to your goals, right? And so, you know, this will help you to overcome any setbacks or solve problems, or just be able to align with your long-term goals, right? So this is a time to use this aspect, because we know that Gemini could be a bit scattered. Gemini is mutable, flexible, versatile. Sometimes you're here, there, and everywhere. And so, you know, Saturn is saying, yes, you need to be bold. Yes, you need to be courageous, but courageous when it comes to disciplining yourself, courageous and bold when it comes to setting certain boundaries and parameters. And so it helps you to structure yourself when it comes to, you know, just tasks, you know, routines, certain deadlines, projects that you're working on, just being able to follow through, right? So on the second, you know, Saturn is going to be giving us that little extra oomph. Hopefully we could use it and not abuse it, or you're not on the wrong side of the energies where, you know, you already missed certain deadlines and certain commitments you didn't follow through, and so Saturn is kind of coming down hard on you, harshly on you. But for the most part, you know, it's a positive aspect, and so this would be a good time for, well, for me, for creating and, you know, editing and, you know, launching things and really pushing out. Again, Sun is mutable, and so it's actionary, could be here, there, and everywhere, but Saturn is kind of like, yo, let's stay on task, you know what I'm saying? Let's do things that are going to help us to get to those long-term goals, right? Okay, as we slide down on June 3rd, we're gonna have Mercury And again, Mercury just slid into Cancer, so just a few degrees into Cancer is going to be squaring Neptune. Okay, and we know that a square is like a square off. We have a disagreement, you know, two situations that, you know, not opposing but just have a different angle or a different perspective. And so this person kind of want to go that way and this person kind of want to go that way. And so there's a bit of confusion or distortion when it comes to how you think, when it comes to how you communicate and process information. And this square is going to be quite, how do you say, elusive, right? Because Neptune is like the higher octane of Mercury. And so if Mercury teaches us about our local vicinity, you know, as we interact with people on our day-to-day basis, our daily ins and daily outs, what we're learning and, you know, what we're experiencing, that ultimately, you know, looks like how we communicate and process information and write things down and transmute all of this, and just our social interactions, right? Neptune is us interacting with some higher planes and some higher dimensions, and or some deeper you know, some deeper depths, right? And so all of the information or all of the things that we communicate when it comes to Neptune seems quite idealistic, seems like a fantasy, is not really grounded or rooted in our current reality. And so again, there's distortion, there's confusion. You're bringing in a lot of fantasy and idealism and best wishes and things that you wish that could really happen, things that, you know, are going to take time to really bring down into this dimension. And so clarity suffers under these type of alignments. There could be fabrication or elaboration, embellishment, you know, people trying to make things a bit larger than they seem, or just outright, you know, sharing misinformation, right? So this is a great time, or mistakes could happen as well, because again, you know, people are channeling these ideals, these fantasies, you know, if things could go the best way possible based on your imagination, this is what will happen, versus Mercury, you know, which is like the reality that we could all see, that we could communicate, that we could, you know, really process together. We need to really double check you know, sources, avoid even signing contracts or making huge decisions without really double checking and verifying, right? This is a time to, you know, dot the I's and cross the T's and pay for a lawyer. You know what I'm saying? However, it's a great time to lean into creativity, you know, if you're directly into just artistic pursuits. Then Mercury squaring, you could get outside of the box, you could get very unconventional, and you could express yourself in a very individualistic and a unique way. So great for content creating, storytelling, you know, bringing your wild imagination or fantasies and localizing it, socializing it, making it make sense, right? Or putting it in a way that people could consume, whether it's relatable or unrelatable. You know, you have the ability to kind of share it, right? And because Mercury is in Cancer, you could do that in an emotional way that could really pull on, you know, certain heartstrings, right? Okay, so that's that alignment, Mercury squaring Neptune, right? Neptune being in Aries, Mercury early degrees Cancer. Be careful, especially when it comes to business, right? On June 4th and 5th, we do have some tricky alignments over here. These ones are a bit harder because it pertains the moon, right? Moon equals your moon, equals your emotions, your memories, how you react and respond, your heart space. And so the moon is going to be in Aquarius, right? Just coming out of, you know, being full in Capricorn. We talked about it being slightly full in Capricorn, so we still need to be careful as the moon is full in Capricorn. And honestly, moon doesn't like to be in Capricorn. Capricorn is the opposite of where the moon likes to be, which is in Cancer. And so a full moon in Capricorn, you could get like some real shadow sides of you know, what the Cancer would represent, which would be nurturing, protecting, homely environment. And so the shadow side, you know, you could be a bit stoic, a bit dismissive, a bit defensive, quite protective, crabby, you know, just about stability, you know, and staying on your one-two and your public image. We briefly discussed about that. So we need to be careful. But as the moon slides into Aquarius, there's going to be a conjunction with Pluto, who's retrograde. Okay? And so we need to expect some deep introspection around community, technology, you know, collective structures. Pluto in retrograde, I like to describe Pluto as the planet of doom, gloom, death, and destruction. However, there's a promise of rebirth. And so, you know, Pluto is that type of energy, is going to test the foundation. You know, by the time it gets to us, it's quite chaotic. And so there's a shock. There's, you know, let's go deep to the core. Let's figure out what's real, what's not real, test the foundations, shake things up. Okay, if it's sturdy, then we're good. But if it's not, things are going to break down, things are going to fall, things are going to crumble. And then you kind of rebuild anew on a solid foundation, right? Or you rebuild. Okay, so retrograde, you kind of re-examine, you redo, you rethink, you realign. Anything to do with that RE energy, you know, reassessing, and going within. And so the conjunction, you know, there might be certain hidden feelings. Again, we're talking about your moon, right? So certain moods, certain emotions, certain feelings, certain reactions that you may have to, you know, certain people, places, and things. Aquarius energy that deals with your network, your affiliations, your friends, associations, any groups that you're in, you know, things that deal with social reform or empowerment. You know, so we need to be quite vigilant or aware, right, of this conjunction with the moon. Depending on what house you have it in, may not, you know, have much effect on you. But again, a retrograde, you know, the full moon effects just wearing off in Aquarius. I think it was worth mentioning, right? Especially if you're Aquarius, okay? And that's going to be around 5 degrees Aquarius. And so you might want to be careful, especially, you know, with your affiliations, your networks, your social interactions, community, maybe technology. Don't want to have any too unstable emotions, right, during that time. And so when it comes to a waning moon, now this is a discussion that I want to open up right now, because if you go onto the internet, there are lots of people who interact with the moon as if they're the moon, right? And in some cultures, or some people understand that the moon kind of does the opposite, or we do the opposite of the moon. For example, when the sun rises, right, the moon is invisible. And when and we rise with the sun, just kind of follow me. And when the sun sets, we set, right? Now when the sun sets, but there's no setting, we know it's the earth moving, but let's just go with the story, right? Let's just go with the analogy. When the sun sets, let's say the moon rises, or now the moon is visible, right? So when the moon is visible, we are at rest, we're sleeping. So we are not risen with the moon, but when the moon is risen, we are at sleep. So we kind of do the opposite of the moon, right? So we work with the moon in the opposite way of the sun. So when the sun rises, we rise with the sun. We act out the attributes of the sun. However, with the moon, it's the opposite. When the moon is quite visible, we're in darkness, right? Because the moon has, you know, the energy, the illumination, right? When the moon is seen. And so likewise, when it comes to, you know, working with the moon per se, we have to do it in a opposite fashion. And so during a full moon, it's like we're giving energy to the moon, we're giving the light to the moon, we're giving the center stage to the moon, right? So your emotions, whatever you're working on, you know, you're putting in, you know, a lot of intention and emotional, you know, feeling into what you're doing, right? And when the moon is full, you have all of the energy, so we kind of rest. And when the moon is waning, we're gaining, so we're receiving back that energy from the moon, right? So that's how I look at it. But some people look at it in a different way, right? Some people look at it like, okay, you do the same thing as the moon. So when the moon is waning or releasing, that's when you start letting go of things, and you start cutting off people, and you start kind of releasing or banishing, right? However, in major astrology, when the moon is releasing, we're gaining what the moon is releasing. Okay? And so this is a time for us to be harnessing all of the energy from the full moon. Like I said, if you were planting good seeds during the new moon in Taurus, okay, this moon, I kind of see it initiated in Scorpio. So we got some money, you know what I'm saying? We got some money, we got some mutual relationships, you know what I'm saying? We got down and, deep when it comes to our emotional state and just how we connect on a deep basis. And so yeah, it was a good, little first part of the full moon for us, who were doing that thing. But on another note, as it wanes in Capricorn, in Aquarius, going into Pisces, Aquarius into Pisces, we could be gaining before we start looking towards the new moon again to start planting new seeds. Okay, so again, protecting everything that we've been doing, especially when it comes to your routines, your habits, just the things that you were working on for the past 30 days. We got to be, protecting that, making sure we could stabilize that, but also being able to see, how it could be, getting a bit easier, more comfortable, and you're already getting the benefits, like the reward of why you were actually doing it in the first place. Okay, also this week, we know that Saturn is in Aries, and so there are certain aspects. There's going to be a sextile. It's going to be peaking on probably Tuesday. But again, the emphasis or the influence of being disciplined and determined. So maybe we should plan the week, from Monday all the way to Sunday. Break down, all the major tasks and put them into manageable steps. Prioritize having quality over quantity, right? And just producing, something that is really, really good. And so not really rushing our tasks, prioritizing, having discipline, and really being able to navigate this week. Again, using that type of Saturn energy to just keep us kind of grounded. Gemini here, there, and everywhere. We're on this little sprint or countdown to summer. And so there's going to be a lot of things being thrown out there, getting us prepared for summer. What is going to be advertisements for, business or entertainment events or education or some new relationship, something, I'm saying, whether it's summer body or you're gonna be booed up for this, whatever it is, like, this is the time where all of that type of stuff is gonna be happening. Even on a local basis, we're gonna have our music fest happening. Then we're going into summer, so the CPL, and so all of these things happening. Again, Saturn is saying, yo, what's your goal though? What's your purpose though? Where do you see yourself going, or how do you want to be seen in the long term? And so all of these steps that you're taking as you're mitigating and adapting this little portion before we go into summer, make sure that it's in alignment to your long-term goals. Again, fact check information. Fact check. We got Mercury and this Neptune thing, and so we want to be revisiting the sources. We want to making sure we are telling the truth, we're not embellishing. And so we do have aspects that are great for storytelling, but don't make up too much facts, okay? I know that if you're working in, communication, or you're a storyteller, sometimes people just want to hear a good story, yeah? But at the same time, make sure that the story is founded in truth and in honesty and in good intentions. Okay, now we already talked about Mercury shifting into Cancer, and we know when Mercury shifts a sign, we know that the sun shortly is going to be shifting a sign, and so we're shifting out of this Gemini energy into a big Cancer energy. Jupiter is there, has been there for quite some time, since last year. So we know what the Cancer energy is all about. Especially when it comes to your heart space, your home, what makes you feel comfortable, what makes you feel nurtured and protected. And so there's a sort of blend of that energy where our minds are already preparing for what's to come. And so there's a blend of, you know, intellect but also emotion. We are talking about how things make us feel, right? Not just what it is. So for example, there may be certain news headlines or news articles that, you know, affect a certain mood, right? And so we are learning how we could navigate moods and emotions, right? And communicating about that. And last but not least, you know, major countdown until summer. I don't know how much days. I mean, if basically 22 days, 21 days, right? We know that the sun is going to shift into Cancer on June the 21st. And so we got what, 22 days, 21 days until we get down into the summer. So if you're working on your summer body, you know, you got 3 weeks, you know what I'm saying, to really be consistent and to really push. If you're launching something for the summer, you know, you got about 3 weeks, you know what I'm saying. And so I hope you guys find this little forecast helpful and useful as we navigate the upcoming strong, I don't want to call it a week because we need to be strong. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below what you thought about this video. Also the open discussion about moon magic, how to really use the moon. Are we going with what the moon is doing, or do we work in opposition to the moon to cause that counterbalance, right? Let me know down in the comments down below, and that's gonna be an ongoing conversation because I mean that's how I use it and that's how I view it, that's how I was taught. And you know, it kind of makes sense. Sometimes you got to make it make sense. Neptune in Aries type of energy. All right, so major farewell until we meet or greet again. You already know I'm Kevis Major, doing it major.